Yes, the chair does recognize Senator the Honorable John Bostwick.
We continue to form this space and not so high ground and continue to lead this. I would like to take a brief moment in asking Senator Bostwick to recognize the passing of Mr. Parliament, Mr. Miranda. And like many of us, I think, I had individual and personal relationship with Mr. Miranda, and consider him very much to be a national asset. As I do, and I make a point of it, as I do Mr. Clarence and Mr. Ford, both whom, including now the chief Mr. Miranda, possess a wealth of knowledge that is invaluable to any young aspiring politician, and in fact to any young Bahamian seeking a knowledge of parliamentary procedure and parliamentary history. Long before I got to this place, I sought the guidance and advice of all three of those gentlemen, even when drafting my 20-year national plan, because of their extensive knowledge of parliamentary procedures elsewhere in their province. They are true experts, and we should more than cherish them in love and recognize the loss of the country in Mr. Manley's untimely death. I listen what they do closely to Mr. Bell on this presentation. I have to say, with the great success that again, he's going to say the terrorist. Every time it comes in, he terrorizes it. Yeah. Say the truth. Fair enough.
To object to that word being used in respect of any honorable member of this place, and I ask the honorable senator to withdraw it.
My president, I withdraw, and I'm certain that my longtime friend and most learned colleague, yes, would understand that I don't mean that. And I think, without causing me to rise again, I think he does mean to instill a certain amount of terror amongst us, so that we should be aware of our present situation, of the true reality that he speaks to. Well,
I just want to interject that I do agree with you in terms of the content being one that perhaps raises, terrorizes. But as you said, doesn't make the deliverer of the message a terrorist. And certainly it speaks to, I think, awakens us all as to some of the realities that we're living in. Yeah.
And just the doubly certain that I did withdraw that and it wasn't being true at all. Today, his tale has gone beyond high-tech weaponry to tales of gangs, to brutal rapes. Again, it doesn't paint a very good picture. Before I get into specifically addressing some of the things before, and I will join the spirit of the as the shadow minister of children, it probably brought to my attention and struck me, brought to my attention while sitting on our national carrier. I always fly to Omega, safely after the moon. I'm not concerned about getting there on time, getting there safe. And the belief, the true belief that the best pilots in the world are the Bahamas Air. I was amazed to read, again, Up and Away, which is the self-proclaimed in-flight magazine for the 1.2 million air passengers that travel on the national air carrier. And tourist, every passenger on our national airline to write as follows. The Bahamas have always been special historically in a matter of transshipment, from the migration of the Indians to Columbus to pirating to slavery. Hell, we made a whole industry out of shipwrecking, not to mention rum running and drug trafficking. This is in our national, well, they don't actually state it. This is the editorial, the main editorial, editor's main frame, but it's not actually, it's very careful. They speak to Bahamas Air as Bahamas Air wasn't just a business set out to be profitable. The editor who doesn't name himself in a byline, or herself. States that Bahamas Air served a function more important than prudent fiscal management. Goes on, every year for a long while, the airline has been operating in the red at the expense of the government, at the expense of the people. Administrations have had no choice but to keep the national liability afloat. Well, you have to look at the image. And now to get straight into the crime issue, to get straight into the issue of the day, crime, it goes on to talk about the economic recession, and it says, it has a new government forced to find creative ingenuity in the midst of recovering economy and a crime dilemma that is equally as vexing. I mean, if you say, Senator Bell, Minister Bell, your statement's the truth, eh? Okay? I honor your statements. They come from a very informed position, an incredibly informed position, a history of crime fighting. But as the Shadow Minister of Tourism, to see that message, and not being cute, the same message that was reflected on billboards leading from the airport during the last election, now in our up and away, and claiming to be read by 1.2 million tourists and or returning guests, visitors, residents. This cannot be the message that we are sending to the world. Cannot be. Please. Crime continues to be the message. It was the message that was the topic of discussion last time we were here. And I am happy to see that it is not a topic that is being in any way downplayed. As a side mention, downplayed as I feel to some extent, and I can't help but look at Minister Bell, it is not being downplayed to the extent that I feel, to some extent, the recent home invasion of our Deputy Prime Minister, who was then acting Prime Minister, is being downplayed. It cannot be taken casually. As to me, this was a true threat, a real and present, clear and present danger to our very national security at the time it happened. It can't be looked at in any other way. That crime has reached that high. And correct me if I'm wrong, Senator Bell, for a brief moment in our history, our Commander-in-Chief was held hostage by armed hooligans. And that's not the central topic of every presenter here today. That is not. We talk, and I have to echo Senator Bell's, we come here and we talk. I want to say exactly what we were debating earlier. We were debating earlier, right? Toilets and what goes in them. So we come here to debate. We talk about who number this, who number that, who number is up with it. But the mere fact is that our Commander-in-Chief was held hostage for a brief moment in time by armed thugs in his residence. Acting Commander-in-Chief. Acting or not. So, recently we got another one of these international agencies with their reports, and they like to put out reports. My correct Senator, those at IDB recently putting out a report and noting, amongst other issues, and we like to read these reports to see where we're in the top 10, but horror to horror, we're not reported that we're the top 10 in financial services or top 10 banking jurisdiction or top 10 in tourism, top 10 in crime, top 10 as in the most heavily armed states per capita. And they're not talking about licensed weapons in the hands of good, God-fearing business people. They're talking about the numbers of illegal weapons. Equal to, you hear that? Equal to states where there are ongoing armed conflicts. And when people talk about the top 10 in the world, it's not top 10 in the developed world, like Miami no, this top 10 in the world, Afghanistan, Iraq, Colombia, Bogota, these places, Mexico City, these places where we say, oh my God, we wouldn't go there, or we wouldn't drive to Liberty City, oh my God, look, we're ahead of them. That's the reality. We want to talk about numbers. Who got the highest and who got the lowest? It's beyond unbelievable that we're talking about numbers. Again, we've got the U.S. issuing warnings. As the Shadow Minister, and these things horrify me. How many warnings have they issued this year? Alone. Tourism is our nest egg. That is it. They continue to erode financial services. That's an industry in danger, under threat. Now, tourism is being threatened as aggressively by crime and our inability to address it. What are we going to have left? What you can tax? Ain't going to be none to tax. So, it is more than agreed and welcome that we need to take effective, serious steps to show that we have a serious intent about addressing crime. I spoke a little bit to this last time we were here, and I'm very pleased again, Senator Bell, to see that certain amendments to the Firearms Act that were being proposed or considered didn't actually come through in the fullness that they were being looked at. I'm pleased to say that civil society is now becoming more interested in becoming motivated and becoming involved. And there is actively being formed the Bahamas National Firearms Association, which will exist to champion gun safety, to champion gun training and testing and certification, to champion ballistics testing even for licensed weapons, so that any round fired from a licensed weapon anywhere in this country could be tracked and traced back to that weapon. To champion public-private partnerships with the Royal Bahamas Police Force towards the creation of proper training facilities with proper and adequate amounts of ammunition and rounds. True public-private partnership towards creating the right environment for responsible gun ownership. In looking at the Firearms Act, there are one or two slight provisions that I would urge the administration and the ministers present to have a look at. One of which is the provision with regards to the transportation of parts. Whereas everything about the act is meritorious, so I'll start with that. But in the actual policing of it, in the actual working of it, one could imagine situations where a licensed gun owner of a regular shotgun might need to change the trigger assembly. God forbid, under this act, should he import it or even order it to come in directly to him and not have the license to import that part, he might be going to jail for 25 years. One would think that if that is going to be the case, the licensing for these import of parts and the way in which that is actually done in practice would be timely and would be considerate of persons who might be licensed gun owners just simply seeking to repair their weapon. And again, without going deep into it, as it was spoken to at great length by my learned friend and Senator Thompson, we continue to put in these provisions. I hear Senator Bell referring to the provision with regard to presumption of possession being removed from person in control, but it was removed and replaced by persons present, which I think is going the wrong direction and presents potential catastrophe for many innocent people, many very innocent people. Know where you are, know who you're with, know who you're catching a ride with, know who you're giving a ride to, search them, check them, pat them down before they get in your car. Extraordinary onus and burden to put on individual citizens. And I also question how it is that we intend to police the extension of these provisions to every ship that carries the Bahamian flag. And again, I would be very curious to see how that is, in fact, enforceable, and also whether or not it is, in fact, desirable at a time when piracy is rampant, piracy is real. Bahamian flag ships are in the Indian Ocean, are subject to piracy, have been subject to piracy. And it would seem to me strangely onerous to have those persons governed by this act here in the Bahamas with regard to possessing firearms for their protection. Moving on to the amendments to the Penal Code. While a very, very learned Attorney General referred in her address to this to the sections and the provisions as really relate to organized criminal group, which again cannot be criticized in any shape or form. I would like to read the definition of unlawful gang as provided by the Act, which is defined as unlawful gang means any organized criminal group, fine, or other body consisting of 3 or more persons, whether formally or informally organized for the purpose of which is inter alia to A, and again, no objection here, have as one of his activities the commission of an indictable offense, although I think it's hard to prove the intent, but B, any or all of the members of which engage in or have, within the preceding 3 years, engaged in the commission of a series of such offenses. That goes on in Section 90A, gang membership. A person who, A, is a member of an unlawful gang as so defined, or B, participates in or contributes to the activities of an unlawful gang, again with this definition. Without going through the full definition, because I think one of my colleagues will go a bit further with this, I have highlighted all the way down for my learned Attorney General's convenience, down to Section 90, subsection 3, and everything above it. Madam, this language would suggest that the Lead Institute, right now at the Lead Institute, there are, I think, 3 or 4 young men who have criminal ankle bracelets on. They would have participated in some unlawful criminal activity within the last 3 years. Is the Lead Institute to be defined as an unlawful gang? I don't think so. But no. It doesn't read that. And I invite you, with the greatest respect, to look at the definition of gang. And there might need to be.
I would just refer him, Madam President, again to his definition, the definition of the unlawful gang. And it is, the purpose of which is, among other things, have as one of its activities the commission of an indictable offense, so one of its purposes is to commit crime, indictable offenses, or the provision of, or an offense under the provision of the Dangerous Drugs Act. That's A. Just for the purpose of the gathering together. B. Any or all the members of it engage in present tense.
Or have.
In the past 3 years, the commission of a series of such offenses.
Yes.
So there is here very clearly it says here clearly that they engage in a series of such offenses.
Yes.
Right? Now, meaning they are gathered together to commit those offenses.
No, it doesn't.
I don't think that the Lead Institute, with the greatest of respect, could be accused of coming together to engage in those offenses or a series of such offenses.
With the greatest respect, Madam AG, that's not what Part B of the definition says. And clearly it says where any or all of its members or have engaged or have within the past 3 years in the commission of a series of indictable offenses.
Read it from clear. But it is important. I know that my learned friend, the honorable member, doesn't intend to mislead. Unlawful gang says organized for the purpose of interviewing. So it's very clear. The Lead Institute is not organized for the purpose of committing criminal offenses.
Madam AG, again, I thank you for your interpretation of what is written. But again, I suggest that we look, if, at some point, have a look at what I feel might be misleading in the definition. Again, in the interest of the spirit, I had intended to read through the full section, but I will leave that with you. The ghostly Christmas past, yes. Within the Sexual Offences Act, again, I applaud the government for bringing this bill to the table. And some of us might suggest that it could go somewhat further in some ways. Again, madam, just in the interest of contribution, Section 26B reads, the particulars of every conviction for specified offense committed after the coming into the operation of Sections 26. With the greatest respect, I would suggest that, as Senator Bell pointed out, some of these offenses and some of these offenders that have already been committed need to be included. That should be retrospective in that way. We need to get them all. Some of them who are on the street now. Is it proposed that it will only operate going forwards? Because that would allow all of those persons whom Senator Bell described to escape the net. And we need to make it retrospective or consider doing so. The Section 26C refers to the ability to amend the register should a person be successful on appeal. And again, in the interest of what you have said, that I appreciate that this administration is looking both ways, at the rights of the accused and at being strict and firm. It would seem to me to be too late to amend it after a final appeal. The damage would already have been done. Maybe the person's name should not be included on the register until the conclusion of the final appeal. to imagine having been included on such a register and then to be acquitted. It's pretty hard to erase the stench that would already exist. The 26J, as was mentioned quite a bit by Senator Bell, is also a point that I look to. And reading the end language, he put a lot of focus on people that would fit this description. It seems to me that a person, a sex offender, who is considered to present a risk of significant harm to the health or safety of the public or any particular individual should not be on our streets. And yes, it is, and this is why I say maybe one would go a little further in some ways, and to ensure that that type of individual, if on a release, if persons could be of the view that this person presents a significant risk of harm to any member of the public, such a person shouldn't be on the street. Again, I feel very strongly about that. The quick mention to what has already gone before, and I will conclude with regard to correctional services. The move towards rehabilitation is very commendable. And the statements made earlier this morning by Senator Bell with regard to classification of inmates, assessment, and classification with regards not only to placement within the prison system, but also with regard to their education status and their ability to be employed, are all very positive. I have proposed, when again writing my national plan, that the income of inmates do be classified, and that in fact it do be allocated in certain ways. The Act speaks to the collection of inmate income and the placing in accounts for the inmate, and one might wish to consider heavily taxing inmates so that they are made to contribute for the cost of their incarceration. $18,000 per head is a lot of money. And if you've got an inmate who has been assessed to be a good accountant, you might be able to get some solid income from him, and he should be able to contribute to the cost of his incarceration. A percentage of his income quite possibly could be paid into a victim's compensation fund. And I think it might be time to consider compensating victims of all forms of crime. There's always a victim. And if inmates are being made into income-generating employees whose income is being actually secured for them in banking accounts, at the same time they should be made to pay for the damage they've done and the cost of their incarceration. When we look at prison, and again, prison reform, the truth is that the majority of persons in prison are on remand. And so the talk again of swift justice and the ability to move persons through the system, I think will do much to address the overcrowding, which makes Fox Hill, which is a great part of why Fox Hill is the hell it is, where you have 5 men to a cell that was really meant for 1 man. The discussion also towards addressing ourselves to reform, a total reform of our judicial system with regard to consideration of the number of persons who are incarcerated in Foxhell for non-violent offenses. That really, the punishment that is being merited out doesn't equal the crime committed. And again, I've said in this place before, non-violent offenses, including petty thefts, the inability to pay court fines and simple court fines sometimes, fines you 3 months in Foxhell, and simple possession of marijuana. These things should not lead to us contributing to the creation of a criminal class. It is almost that it has become a crime when you would put somebody in Foxhole for 3 months, for 6 months, for the inability to pay a traffic fine or the inability to pay any court-levied fine. It's almost like it's a crime to be poor. that would jail you for being poor. And the alternative for nonviolent offenders should be community sentencing, aggressive community sentencing, for hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of hours. But I think that that's a much more productive method of dealing with such a criminal. I go further and I say the real truth when we talk about Fox Hill is that we really do need a new prison. We need to address ourselves to an entirely new prison facility. And maybe not just one, a maximum security prison facility and a minimum/medium security prison facility. And this is not something that is new. This is not something that is unique. And in fact, the person whom we've all come to term the father of our nation, the original Prime Minister, Sir Lyndon Oscar Pinland, talked about the need of a new prison from as early as 1968 and how wrong it was and the conditions that our Black Bahamian brothers were being kept in. And I suggest that if we simply cannot afford it, then maybe some of the bold debates we need to have is about privatizing the prison system. The UK, the US, they all now operate some private prison systems. In fact, they attract foreign investors who invest in private prisons. They spend $18,000 plus a head. It might be profitable. So again, we do need to look a little further and a little deeper. These positions are not any new positions for me to proffer and to represent. Again, I have written them, published them, going on 3 years ago. The discussion, though, of crime, I think does need to, and by the way, Madam Attorney General, I do applaud your expansion of the judicial system of the Supreme Court justices. Again, a very much necessary development. The discussion of crime, though, does need to expand to our source. We seem to be always having the discussion at the end, at prison and punishment and rehabilitation. We need to move the discussion to stopping the development of a criminal class, to addressing what are the sources of our present crime dilemma. One of the things, before we move from the policing side of it, that we do not discuss and that should be discussed is the reestablishment of truancy department. As we talk about addressing our young people, the first strong arm of the law should not be the policeman, the jail cell, the judge, Fox Hill. That should come before with an authoritative presence in a truancy department. We should not be necessarily treading thin on, and again I say with the definition that we see in our new gang laws, when we see young people gathered of a certain age during school hours, the truancy department should have the right to pull upon them and to detain them. And to detain them until such time as their parents come and collect them. And if their parents come in to collect them, to fine and fee their parents for them not being in school. And if they can't pay the fine and the fee, to put them in community service for 200 hours. And all of a sudden, parents will be doing what they're supposed to be doing and policing their children. We do need to talk more to policies of youth development, policies, bold discussions of national service, and things that could go towards addressing the root source of crime. So without getting too much further into it, I am very happy to rise in support of us beginning to address ourselves to our crime dilemma. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much, Honorable Lieutenant